So this is going to be part 3. We're still in chapter 7, from Dreams, Evolution, and Value Fulfillment by Jane Roberts, a Seth book. So Seth says, again, the genetic system is a far more open one than is usually supposed. It not only contains and conveys information, but it also reacts to information from the physical and cultural worlds. In a way, I hope to explain then, the genetic system also reacts to those beliefs and events that are paramount in any given civilization. Events can trigger genetic activity, not simply through, say, chemical reactions, but through individual and mass beliefs about the safety or lack of it in the world at large. There are also what I will call genetic dreams, which are inspired directly by genetic triggering. These help form and direct consciousness as it exists in any given individual from before birth. The fetus dreams. As its physical growth takes place in the womb, so the shaping of its consciousness is also extended by genetic dreams. These particular fetus-oriented dreams are most difficult to describe, for they are actually involved with forming the contours of the individual consciousness. Such dreams provide the subjective understanding from which thoughts are developed, and in those terms, complete thoughts are possible before the brain itself is fully formed. It is the process of thinking that helps bring the brain into activity, and not the other way around. Such thoughts are like now electrical patterns that form their own magnets. The ability to conceptualize is present in the fetus, and the fetus does conceptualize. The precise orientation of that conceptualizing and the precise orientation of the thinking patterns wait for certain physical triggers received from the parents and the environment after birth. But the processes of conceptualization and of thoughts are already established. This establishment takes place in genetic dreams. Infants think long before they can speak. Thought must come before language. Language is thought's handmaiden. The ability to use language is also genetically built in through the precise orientation again with the physical triggering of the parent's native language. Children learn such languages mentally long before they are physically capable of speaking them. But again, in genetically inspired dreams, children, or rather infants, practice language. Before such infants hear their parents speak, however, they are in telepathic communication. And even in the fetus, genetic dreams involve the coding and interpretation of language. Those dreams themselves inspire the physical formations necessary to bring about their own actualizations. Genetic dreams of one kind or another continue throughout your lives, whether or not you are consciously aware of them. They were of prime importance in man's evolution, as you think of it. They were the source of dreams mentioned earlier, that sent man on migrations after food, that led him toward fertile land. Those dreams are most closely related to survival in physical existence. And whenever that survival seems threatened, such dreams arise to consciousness whenever possible. They are the dreams that warn of famines or of wars. Such dreams, however, can also be triggered often, as in your own times, when the conscious mind is convinced that the survival of the species is threatened. And in such cases, the dreams then actually represent man's fears. Over-anxiety, then, can confuse the genetic system, and in a variety of ways. The existence of each of the species is dependent upon trust, indeed, a biological optimism, in which each species feels the freedom to develop the potentials of its members in relative safety, within the natural frameworks of existence. Each species comes into being not merely feeling a natural built-in trust in its own validity, but is literally propelled by exuberance in its ability to cope with its environment. It knows that it is uniquely suited to its place within life's framework. The young of all species exhibit an unquenchable rambunctiousness. That rambunctiousness is built in. Animals know that their own lives spell out life's meaning. They feel their relationship with all other forms of life. They know that their existences are vitally important in the framework of planetary existence. Beyond that, they identify themselves with the spirit of life within them so fully and so completely that to question its meaning would be inconceivable. Not inconceivable because such creatures cannot think, but because life's meaning is so self-evident to them. Whenever man believes that life is meaningless, whenever he feels that value fulfillment is impossible or indeed non-existent, then he undermines his genetic heritage. He separates himself from life's meaning. He feels vacant inside. Man for centuries attached faith, hope, and charity to the beliefs of established religions. Instead, these are genetic attributes inspired and promoted by the inseparable unity of spirit and flesh. The animals are quite as familiar with faith, hope, and charity as you are, and often exemplify it in their own frameworks of existence to a better extent. Any philosophy that promotes the idea that life is meaningless is biologically dangerous. It promotes feelings of despair that directly hamper genetic activity. Such philosophies are extremely disadvantageous creatively, since they dampen the emotional spirits and exuberance and a sense of play from which creativity itself emerges. Such philosophies are also deadening on an intellectual basis, for they must of necessity close out man's great curiosity about the subjective matters that are his main concern. If life has no meaning, then nothing else really makes any difference, and intellectual curiosity itself also ends up withering on the vine. The intellectual ideas of societies, therefore, also have a great effect upon which genetic systems are triggered and which ones are not. You have genetic systems, then, carrying information that is literally incalculable through your technologies, through your physical experience. You are also surrounded by an immense array of communication and information of an exterior nature. You have your telephones, radios, televisions, your Earth satellites, all networks that process and convey data. Those inner biological systems and the exterior ones may seem quite separate. They are intimately connected, however. The information you receive from your culture, from your arts, sciences, fields of economics, is all translated, decoded, turned into cellular information. Certain genetic diseases, for example, may be activated or not activated according to the cultural climate at any given time, as the relative safety or lack of it in that climate is interpreted through private experience. In one way or another, the living genetic system has an effect upon your cultural reality, and the reverse also applies. All of this is further complicated by the purposes and intents of the generations in any historical period, and the reincarnational influences. Value fulfillment always implies the search for excellence, not perfection, but excellence. Excellence in any given area, emotional, physical, intellectual, intuitional, scientific, is reflected in other areas, and by its mere existence serves as a model for achievement. This kind of excellence need not be structured then into any one aspect of life, though it may appear in any aspect, and wherever it appears, it is an echo of a spiritual and biological directive, so to speak. There are different historical periods in your terms where the species has showed what it can do and what is possible in certain specific directions when the genetic and reincarnational triggers are touched and opened full blast, so that certain characteristics appear in their clearest, most spectacular light to serve as individual models and as models for the species as a whole. Again, such times are closely bound with reincarnational intents that direct the genetic triggering, and that meet in the culture the further stimulus that may be required. The time of the great masters in the fields of painting and sculpture is a case in point. So, you see, I am getting to one of your favorite questions, and we will continue the discussion at our next session. He's talking to Rob, who has a question about why are there no Rembrandts anymore? Why are there no more masterpieces like there used to be? So that's the end of this session, but there is a question that's asked and an answer by Seth. Rob and Jane are curious about people who maintain that the universe is an accident, or that it has no meaning, or that there's no such thing as life after death, or that psychic abilities don't exist. People who call themselves skeptics, who seem to have a very rigid focus only within what they call physical reality. Those attitudes are very common. Some people have built-in careers around negative beliefs like that. And Jane and I were wondering how they react after physical death, when they discover that they still live, that they may have spent their professional lives maintaining belief systems which, after death, they begin to understand are quite wrong. How do they react? They ask if they're aware of their earlier beliefs, and do they care what they used to think? Are they shocked? Do they have feelings of regret or embarrassment, or what? Or is there such a variety of responses possible that you can't answer the question simply? And how do such people react after death when they start to get glimmerings about the workings of reincarnation? So Seth listened while Rob expressed himself, and this is what Seth said. Well, a tidbit. It is a highly individual matter, so that an overall answer is difficult. Reincarnational patterns also apply. Some people, having lived lives believing in one religious system or another, being completely immersed in them, give themselves shock treatments of sorts then, living lives in which they believe in nothing, or at least freeing themselves from any beliefs, only to discover, of course, that a belief in nothing is the most confining belief of all. That realization is the eye-opener in such cases. There are those who over-relied upon religious beliefs, using them as crutches, and in later lives then they might, such people, throw those crutches away, overreacting to their newfound freedom. And through living lives as meaningless, they then realize, after death, that the meaningfulness of existence was, after all, not dependent upon any religious system. It was there all along, but they had not seen it. The variations are endless. On the whole, in the vast scheme of reincarnational reality, a belief in life's meaning is by far the rule, and other excursions are indeed eccentric variations. Specifically, however, such life episodes will of course involve their, quote, moments of after-death realization, dismay, shock, or what have you. And for those of you who are artists or interested in art, you can just pause and read this. This is session notes number 2 when Seth was referring to painting, and this is what Rob wrote, his questions about why there aren't any more Rembrandts. And in the next part, the next recording, which would be part 4, Seth actually explains this. Seth actually explains the reasons for it, why these incredible artists of their time were able to do what they did. And if you want a sneak peek at the answer to that particular question, you can go ahead and pause, read, mute me, whatever. Here's your part, and then it goes down, but I will read it in the next video. And also, for anyone who's interested, there is 2 more sessions to complete chapter 7, and then I will go into chapter 8 and keep doing parts.